Today we're going to talk about another on-camera monitor, but not just any monitor, because with the Portkeys LH5H you can control your camera via touchscreen. Pretty much any camera too. If that makes sense and if it's actually worth it, we'll be finding out after the intro. My name is Zeapon Cooper and welcome to Monkey. Before we get to the coolest part where you control your camera via the touchscreen, let's get the general specifications out of the way. The Portkeys LH5H is a 5.2-inch on-camera monitor which features a 1700 nit brightness. It features a 1080 panel, but it also accepts signals of 4K or even 6K in case of the Pocket 6K. The monitor features pretty much every typical port. You have an HDMI in as well as an HDMI out. You can also monitor the audio via the headphone jack. You have a DC in as well as a 1/4-inch screw on the bottom. Some cameras use a USB-C port to be controlled, like the EOS R6, and some have a LANC port. I don't know how to pronounce this, but it looks like a mini headphone jack cable, like my Canon C300 Mark III. And pretty much any camera out there has either or the other. The really cool thing about this though is that the Blackmagic Pocket 4K and 6K don't need any cable at all, and they are being controlled via Bluetooth. But I'll get into that a little later. So now let's really quickly talk about the overall build quality. The overall build quality is fine. It's a little thick, it also has a little thick bezels, but it's all really lightweight and it feels a little plasticky, but that's not bad, and it feels like a small HD monitor for the most part. When it comes to the operating system, the menus and all the features that you have, I really didn't like it. It's complicated, it really takes a hard time to get around, and you can't really find anything that you're looking for within the menu. And unfortunately it didn't come with a manual, and I tried looking it up online and there wasn't any manual on the website as well, so I had to look for other YouTubers like myself to actually find out how this thing actually works. And that was really a pity. Especially when you want to switch from your regular OSD to the camera control menu, you really have a hard time finding it because it requires a lot of swiping from left to right, and then you don't know how to get back. And that really was frustrating when using the monitor, because when I was out there in the field and using the monitor for the first time, there were even functions that I was not able to find. Even when looking for it for 5 to 10 minutes and doing a quick Google search, I really couldn't find these functions, although I knew they were in the monitor, but just the menu wasn't really intuitive at all. So once you took your sweet time to find where everything is, well, everything is there. The problem is when you enable some features like the RGB parade, for example, it blocks pretty much everything else that's on the screen, so that isn't really the most elegant solution, and I've seen other monitors that actually handle that way better. One thing I'm definitely missing is an SDI port. My Canon C300 has SDI and I'm so used to it, and I really don't want to go back to HDMI, so for the Canon C300 Mark III, this would definitely not be the best choice for me at least. Overall, I didn't really like the menu. It really wasn't intuitive. It's really hard to find something, especially when you need it quickly, and when you enable some features, they're blocking parts of your screen. And I think 5.2-inch is already on the smaller side, so overall I wasn't really too happy with the menu and all the features in it. The overall build and image quality is totally fine though. If you're just looking to display whatever comes out of your camera onto an external monitor, then the LH5H does a good job, and it's bright and it's also really high quality. But now let's talk about what you're here for, and that is controlling a camera via touchscreen. And I tried this with the EOS R6, my Canon C300 Mark III, and the Blackmagic Pocket 6K. So let's start with the EOS R6. I thought it would be a pretty cool idea to use this as a dedicated gimbal monitor, because when flying the camera on a gimbal, you can start and stop recording as well as change settings right on the touchscreen of the monitor, instead of having to go to the camera that is already mounted onto your gimbal. And one thing to note first, and I know a lot of you guys ask about this, no, you cannot use touch to focus on the EOS R6 or any other camera. You can pull focus manually by 2 buttons, but it's not really the best result, so pulling focus is probably not the best idea via the touchscreen, unless you have a manually focusing camera like a GH5 for example, and you have the monitor away from your camera and you want to pull focus slightly, maybe during an interview, then this I think should actually work very well. But overall on a camera like the EOS R6, I wouldn't use it. So definitely the coolest feature is that you can start and stop recording while the camera is on the gimbal. but overall there are a couple things that I didn't really like about the whole setup. So one thing that really bothered me when using the monitor is when you have the camera controls enabled, they show up on either side of the monitor. And that makes the already very small image even smaller because now it's compressed in the middle of the screen. Of course, you can just easily swipe it out of the way, but then you need to swipe it back in to stop the recording, and then you're already at 2 touches instead of 1, and then I feel like you could have just pressed a button on a camera. You also can't go into the menu of the camera, so you can't really change any essential settings like going from 4K 25 to 100 frames, for example, so that you do have to do on the camera itself. So it's strictly there to start and stop recording, change shutter and aperture and ISO. And overall, for me, this really isn't enough to justify having a smaller screen as well as routing another cable to your camera. And as I've already mentioned before, I don't think that the built-in functions of the LH5H are really good, and since the EOS R6 pretty much doesn't have any when connecting an HDMI monitor, like focus peaking, waveforms, false color, etc., this really isn't a satisfactory solution, and other monitors that I've tested before do a better job at compensating for that. Pretty much the same thing was true with my Canon C300 Mark III. I want to have a bigger monitor because I'm pulling focus manually, and controlling the camera via the touchscreen really doesn't do anything for me because the Canon C300 Mark III is so well laid out, so I have all the buttons exactly where I want them to be. So again, it would be cool on a gimbal, but then again, it's not worth having such a small monitor and all the other functions, and not having SDI either. So for my Canon C300 Mark III, it's still a no for me.
I'm sorry guys, it's gonna have to be a no.
But now let's come to a scenario where I would actually recommend the monitor, and that is the Blackmagic Pocket 6K, and that has several reasons. Reason number 1 is that everything works via Bluetooth. You don't have to route any cables from the camera to the monitor, and I'm a huge fan of this. If it was up to me, everything would be wireless. Reason number 2, the Blackmagic already has one of the best on-screen displays that I have ever used in any kind of camera, and you can virtually display everything on your external monitor as well. So overall, I would only use the built-in features displayed to the external monitor and not bother with any of the internal features of the monitor itself, and that way that wouldn't really be a problem for me. Reason number 3 is that the ports are aligned nicely. So if you want to power the monitor via an external battery solution, may it be V-mount, gold mount, or even NPF batteries, you can do so, and it's not blocking the ports when attaching it to a small rig monitor mount, for example. And here's reason number 4, and that is that you hardly need the internal monitor at all anymore with the LH5H. So if you want to build your camera out that the V-mount battery is blocking the rear monitor, you can do so, and you can control your entire camera via Bluetooth on your external monitor on top of the camera. And I think this is something that is missing on a lot of builds, because when I had the Blackmagic Pocket 6K, I didn't really want to block the rear screen at all because I always needed it for some things. But if I had the LH5H to put on top of the camera and control my entire camera with it, I would definitely be more flexible when it comes to building out my entire Blackmagic Pocket 6K rig. So let's sum it up. I probably wouldn't recommend the LH5H if you're not a Blackmagic Pocket 4K or 6K owner. It's really not worth it using it with the EOS R6, R5, any Sony camera, or even heavier cinema cameras like the C300 Mark III. If you do, however, own a Blackmagic Pocket 4K or 6K, I think this is a great tool to get more flexibility into your build and be able to control your entire camera via Bluetooth, via the touchscreen of your external monitor. So I hope you liked my honest review of the Portkeys LH5H, and I will also leave some links in the description below so you can check where you can get yours if you're interested in it and if you own a Blackmagic Pocket 4K or 6K. And if you like this video, I would appreciate it if you give it a thumbs up because it really helps the channel go. It does help the channel go, but also it helps the channel grow. And subscribe for future videos, put on the notification bell, and I hope to see you on the next one.